It does matter.
Hey, Glenn Davis here in Houston, Texas. A big fan of soccer down here. And remember, soccer matters.
And this is what happens, when you hit the button and you play it just to make sure that it plays, Glenn, and it plays all the way right to the end, and it doesn't re-cue itself. So good morning.
Good morning. I appreciate that intro. I feel like the world's greatest rock and roll band, the Rolling Stones, right now.
Well, are you Mick or Keith, sir?
Wow. I love the differences in those two guys, but put them together and the songwriting, the lyrics, and everything that goes along with it. By the way, they opened their world tour in Houston in April, which is pretty crazy.
And have you gotten tickets already?
I do the waiting game because I want to get into the pit. So I kind of wait till maybe they nosedive, hopefully.
Glenn Davis in the mosh pit for the Rolling Stones. That is a vision that I now have in my head.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many are moshing down there, but there are. It's interesting. It is a mix of young and old, which is kind of cool. But anyway.
All right. So if the 2023 season for the Houston Dynamo was a Rolling Stones tune, which song would you pick and why?
That's a good one. I would say there's a song from the Some Girls album called Respectable.
Okay.
It was a reclaiming of respect after many years of a barren product.
Okay. Well, so we will take that. And so with everything that happened with the Dynamo last year, great news earlier in the week, the re-signing of Coco Carrasquilla to the mix as well. What do you think with everything that was accomplished and the growth under Ben Olsen, who I think was criminally left out of the Coach of the Year discussion?
Yeah.
Everything that happened last season, what are some of the lessons that you could take with the 2023 season and apply them to 2024, even with the successes that were had by Houston?
So I think the first thing that I think we all know, and is, there was a massive turnover in the roster. So being respectful, the quality of the player and the roster and the extension of the roster just exponentially improved with 17 new players. And then I think over the course of the season, you saw the beauty of Major League Soccer, and that is that you have time to get things right. And you hit July, you hit the Leagues Cup, you get the emergence of Griffin Dorsey right back, and all of a sudden things are clicking, and it's a very good defensive team. From the word go, it was a good defensive team. From the word go, it was a good possession team. So what do we take into this year? I don't know. I think one of the big questions is not a lot was done up front. So they've had to bring back Sebas Ferreira from Vasco da Gama, where he didn't score. And I think in some ways almost the Dynamo are forced to try and make him work and build a little bit of a system around him to kind of accentuate his strengths. And I think he's also probably realized he's going to have to do some things differently at the striker position. So that combined with injuries is going to make it a very interesting start to the season.
And with the CONCACAF Hemispheric Extravaganza that Houston is attached to and getting ready for that, I mean, it is picking up. Business is picking up real quick. And you're having to do with a couple of different lanes of traffic here and get into a season, get into a competition. I mean, it's chaos early, man.
Yeah, I think so. But, I always flip that in the other direction. I always hear everybody, it's tough. Success breeds more competition. But it also breeds more opportunity and more opportunity for people to be together, play games, train. So I like to flip that one. And, look, coaches in MLS consistently say, well, it's a long season. And, you kind of, from our perspective on the outside, you get tired of that. But it is the absolute, honest to God truth. And you have a lot of time to fix things. So there's no urgency right now. I mean, look, I don't think the Dynamo are happy that Herrera is injured, that Nelson Quinones is out for the year. But on the other hand, it allows and gives opportunity to others. You will see some people emerge and take the opportunity. Some won't. And in the case of Hector Herrera, honestly, I think shortening his season is probably the best thing that could happen to him.
Definitely, when you want him for your stretch run and the push and the postseason and all those kinds of things, definitely.
What he put in last year was almost inhumane. I mean, physically at his age, um, his influence on the game. I mean, I think that's going to be the interesting thing, is to see without him, who they're going to play through a little bit more, who becomes a decision maker, because that guy made so many decisions for you last year. But I do think what we saw him do last year was extraordinarily special.
One of the topics that every time you come on to the show that I like to get into, because we want to get into the growth of the game, we want the game to grow, we want it to grow there in Houston, is the fan response. And is it warming up to the successes that were there in 2023? What was it like there in the building in 2023 with the successes and the run late and getting into everything that happened? And what's the response been maintained in the offseason getting ready for 24? Or is it still more of the same that we keep talking about, sadly?
I think their season tickets are up some after the run they went on last year. But you have to remember, they were last in attendance in the league. Okay, the playoffs didn't sell out. There were great crowds. Don't get me wrong. There was great energy in the building. No question. The relevancy is still not where it should be in Houston. There's a lot of competition, but that's not an excuse. This is an amazing soccer city. So, for me, with the 2026 World Cup being here, and you guys in Atlanta have it as well, and I mean, there's all kinds of things. I mean, Atlanta all of a sudden is becoming the epicenter of the game here. There is such an opportunity to market all the diverse cultures in Houston that love the sport. I mean, we've got a massive Nigerian community, Central American, South American, Asian communities. I mean, you name it, we have it. And to me, that's really the direction you got to go. And I know we do all these other things, which I think are fine if they're the tertiary thing. But with the World Cup being here, you have to go to the passion of people's countries, the passion of their sport, highlight their countries, and create that common thread that would certainly pay back to Houston Dynamo.
So then, I mean, I always seem to ask this question because I want the city to survive and I want it to thrive and I want it to grow. What do we do here? I mean, obviously having the World Cup in 26, that's big. But what do we do in the interim to create momentum, even with the successes that seem to be that are there with the Dynamo? You're not selling out the building. Response is there. What do we do to grow it in the interim between now and 26?
I mean, what more can you want here? You got Copa America coming. You got Guatemala and El Salvador selling the stadium out. Honduras selling the stadium. I mean, you attach yourself to this stuff, and you attach yourself to the authentic soccer fan. I don't think it has to be this magical, super hip. I mean, I like that stuff. I think you have to do a lot of that stuff for the younger set for sure. But there's authenticity here. There's people coming from countries that, they're not sitting in padded seats. They're sitting on slabs of concrete that love soccer. And, if you want somebody in your building when it's 90 degrees drinking beer, it's probably not going to be the NBA fan, okay? If you know what I mean. Yeah. So I just think getting back to the thing that makes us love this game, and the stuff that moves. I watched Luton Town against Manchester United this past weekend, and you may have too, John.
Yep.
And what I saw at the end of that game was just like, God, I need more of that, because everything's becoming so commercial and trendy, and and I was just like, man, look at those people in that provincial town applauding their guys. They lost 2-1, but they saw them put their blood and sweat into this game against Manchester and play quite well, frankly, with far less resources. I mean, that's the connection I dig.
Especially you get a place like Kenilworth Road where, there are certain entrances into the Kenny where you're going between row homes.
Yeah. It's so cool though, right? I mean,
the building needed $12 million in renovations to make it TV compatible.
Yeah.
So they had to push everything back, but you get that kind of an environment at the Kenny. And I mean, anyone should kill for that kind of environment and have that kind of flavor, but you can still attach it to the building that you're in your own way.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key here for all of this as it continues to grow.
And the behavior of the fan in that game, all we ever hear is the stupid behavior of fans. And to watch what those fans did was a real lesson, I thought, for all of us.
No doubt. We do have our own stupidity down here segments, sadly, and those happen here on the show more often than not. When it comes to the Western Conference this year on the whole, outside of what's going on in Houston, what are you staring at? Because at cursory glance, I think LAFC has only like 18 players, so they kind of need to sign folks. And they bring in Hugo Lloris, who was just like, yeah, it's cool. I'll come out and you can pay me like $12 and an RTD card or something, and then everything will be fine. I still got questions. I mean, Seattle to me is looking good. I'm interested to see what's going on in Portland with a coaching change. Colorado is spending money. I don't know what they did with Stan Kroenke, but apparently Stan Kroenke has been hit over the head and he's got amnesia and he's spending money in Colorado now.
I agree with that one. That's a great take.
I mean, what did you do with Stan Kroenke and who is this Stan Kroenke?
In the early days of HDNet, because they were based out of Denver, we used to do a lot of games there. Marcelo Balboa and I, and we actually toured the stadium when it was being built, and so we were there a lot, and we just used to just wonder, here's Kroenke, Arsenal, all the stuff, and just where was the investment in the product on the field? So yeah, I don't know. That's a great take, though.
I mean, you had All Caps SC, who you're playing in the CONCACAF Hemispheric Extravaganza. They were great in the regular season because, once again, they're the new toy. You don't know how to handle something Red Bullsian, but then you get them into the postseason, they get exposed. RSL in Vancouver and Dallas and, Zombie Sporting Kansas City. Peter Vermes says that he can't sign any DPs. They'll find some, sofa pizza and some coins under the cushions in the summer, and they'll find some guys and they'll make their push. When you look at the rest of the West, what do you see?
Well, right now, obviously, look, I think we have to applaud the clubs that consistently every year are there, right? The LAFCs, the Seattles, the Sporting Kansas Cities, they've truly established roots. I think RSL is now under Mastroeni, and it's always going to be a difficult team to play. We'll see what happens with Colorado. But I think you just accented what I had said earlier, and that is, to even begin to judge and predict now in the first half of the season before the transfer window, it's almost like flipping a coin, right? Because teams emerge into different things. They morph into different things based on a signing, based on an emergence of somebody. I mean, we saw that perfectly with the Houston Dynamo last year, right? So that's the league we're in. So we can all sit here and predict all we want now, but these aren't the finished products. The coaches know that. They know they have time. And that comes with playing in Major League Soccer in a playoff system. The consequence, let's be fair, it's not that great at the beginning of the year, right? It really isn't. I look close here in Texas since we have 3 teams. I'm always looking to see what Dallas is going to do. I always look at Austin. I think Austin's in a bit of trouble. And I think 2 years ago, and I think that's a good thing for the Houston Dynamo, obviously, to compare themselves to, because they had that amazing season with Drew Usi, who was spectacular. Houston had this amazing season with Hector Herrera. Austin FC was 1 game away from it, and the next year just absolutely collapsed. And if we remember, Violet in Haiti and CONCACAF was the team that set them in this downward spiral, and they were never able to come out of it. And yes, they had some injuries. Yes, they lost Ruben Gabrielson. But I think, I don't know where they're going to be. They're going to still pack them in Austin. But again, to me, the whole thing is I don't get too – I like to just watch the whole thing progress, because this is the league. And I know it's fun for us to sit here, but I think some of the usual suspects are going to be there. And those franchises have to be applauded for their investment, their knowledge, because at the end of the day, some teams are just better at putting staffs together, marketing their clubs, producing players for their club. That's another thing here in Houston that just has been abysmally missed. And I say that respectfully, and when you can get guys through your academy into your first team, I use the word cheap labor. Some people don't like that. They think it's derogatory, but I think you know what I mean. It doesn't count against the salary cap.
Yep.
So I think these are all issues now that make it interesting, make it fun, and are certainly areas that can be improved.
There are two teams that I left out on purpose from the West. One is LAG, and what we're seeing with Greg Vanney, or what we're not seeing with Greg Vanney, and where LAG just seems to continue to spend money poorly, and flounder. And I'm fairly certain that Vanney is going to be one of those folks that a lot of folks are going to grab out the magnifying glass and look at early in the season and, keep a close eye. The other is Minnesota United. And I look at what the Loons are currently, and the only thing I can say is it's a mess, because you let Adrian Heath go with a couple of matches left in last season. Okay, fine. But, if you're not making the playoffs, I didn't see the point. Just let him finish the year out. Let him do his time. He gets the palatial wave on the lap, and you're done. Then you go through not one, but two substitute teachers. Your chief soccer officer decides you were trying to figure out a visa issue, and he didn't want to apparently consort with his players until they were in preseason camp in Tucson and until he could be there. And now it looks like the Manchester United 31-year-old assistant, Eric Ramsey, is close to being named the new head coach. And last time I checked, now, correct me if I'm wrong here, Glenn, but I'm staring at the schedule. And like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm looking at the schedule, and I see that Saturday, February 24th at 8:30 in the evening, Austin is playing Minnesota United. So 4 days before the season, and now you finally, possibly, probably, maybe have your head coach, who's a 31-year-old who was coming from Manchester United. What in the ever-loving loon hell is going on in Minnesota?
Well, I think it goes back to our point of looking at the franchises historically that have been able to be consistent and have consistent front offices, have a consistent theme and the way they go about doing things. And I think we have to learn to appreciate the clubs who have been the best at doing that. Mm-hmm. And I think it gets back to my point that just like in any business in the world, there are some that are better than others at it. There are some that are qualified to be in these positions, and there's some that are not qualified. Not everybody's qualified to be in the positions they are in Major League Soccer. That may be the sell to the public, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily qualified. Now, maybe they're not in the beginning and they're being given time to grow. But, to add a 31-year-old coach who I don't know what his head coaching experience is, and because he's attached to Manchester United, that certainly does sound good. I'm sure he's a knowledgeable guy, but he's 31. Mm-hmm. And, he's going to have players that are older than him or close to his own age. So simply from team management, we'll see how that works. Now, maybe it turns out to be a raving success. I'm not rooting against them, but you can see the teams that are in a little bit of turmoil now, and I think that's what you're pointing out. And they'll have times to correct themselves, or they could go into a downward spiral and never really compete.
All right, Glenn Davis hanging out with us here at ESPN 97.5 in Houston. Soccer Matters, one of the great gurus, one of my oracles when it comes to the sport here in this country.
I'm glad you're on my side, Jim.
Hey, man, anytime, and twice on Tuesday. When it comes to the rules of engagement for Major League Soccer, and specifically I'm referring to the cap and salary and what counts and what doesn't and who's making what and what applies and how much room you have or you don't have. And yes, this is a veiled question about Messi and friends and what's going on in Fort Lauderdale. Does it drive you crazy as much as it does me and everybody else, not knowing how much they don't have to spend to go up against the cap? How far over the cap are they? What do they have to do? Do the rules of engagement drive you crazy when it comes to this kind of stuff?
It's almost like the mystical flight of the ball. Sometimes we just don't know what the heck's going on. I mean, all the rules, and I think it is confusing. Listen, I understand the reasoning why it all started, and that was to make sure the league survived. But yeah, it is confusing. I think a lot of people are confused with all the names that are going to Miami. I don't think they're necessarily getting the deals everybody thinks they're getting. because there is this migration of the lemmings to Miami. Everybody wants to live in Miami right now. Nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I think it can be confusing to the fans. I'm okay with the Miami thing because whether it crashes or not, it's getting a lot of attention. I think people are tiring of the amount of effort that's being put into Messi to monetize him for the league, right? Like you only got the golden goose for so long, right? So we're throwing him out on world tours. Every article that's written about it on MLS Soccer is about Messi. There's a lot of other things that we need to really build up and enjoy in this league. And there's a lot of other good players. And you guys have Miles Robinson going to Cincinnati. I mean, that's the story. You now have Dax McCarty coming. There's a lot of great guys that we have to build up. I know there's only one Messi, and to have acquired him is pretty remarkable. To grab a celebrity soccer player like that and plop him down in Major League Soccer. And I know you want to get everything you could possibly get out of him. But I think for guys like you and me and a majority of the fans, there's a lot of other great storylines in this league. And don't get me wrong, I'm glad he's here. I think he is a remarkable athlete. I think he's a remarkable human from the standpoint of humility. And I think it's great to see somebody that high profile that doesn't need social media, doesn't need all this other stuff to build himself up, doesn't seem to even care about that, and just goes out and plays. And, there are people falling at his feet. So, we'll see. But listen, rest assured, I didn't mean to say listen, rest assured, every game Inter Miami plays with what is looking like an older roster, everybody's going to give them their best game, because some young guy that's out of college and is a rookie, or somebody that's unknown, is going to say, this is my one chance to play against Lionel Messi, and it's a day I want to be good. It's a day I want to do something. And I think in turn that also accelerates everybody on his team as well. Can you imagine being a young guy and all of a sudden you're playing next to and flying on a plane all over the world with Lionel Messi?
Yeah, I mean, Griffin Dorsey, I don't think he didn't back down last season when they were down there in at Fort Lauderdale going up against him.
No. I mean, Messi didn't play that night, but Griffin Dorsey, I mean, there's a great story. You just brought one up in the league. And I mean, of course, that's connected here to Houston, but here's a guy that's been fighting like an animal to make it. 2 years ago, could get forward and couldn't deliver a quality ball. And Griffin has worked so hard on his game and has refined his game. I mean, it's almost mind-blowing. And he was the turnaround for Houston last year because he brought them width. And he's been rewarded with a new contract. I'm a big fan of guys like that because as an American player growing up in the American system, we all know what that means.
No doubt about it. A couple of minutes left with you so you can go back to studying and getting ready for the 2024 season. One of the folks who is a part of our Twitch pitch has a question for you. Mm-hmm. Really am curious what Glenn's thoughts are on Open Cup, given Houston's current status as OC champ.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question, Ricky. I just posted something this morning. And look, I, like many people, maybe Ricky played in it, a lot of people have played in the U.S. Open Cup. This is something that binds us together. This is a string in this country. This league is an example of people coming from all parts of the world, bringing the sport they love into ethnic communities. So if you go back in the early days and you look who won this thing, it's New York Greek Americans, it's Maccabi in L.A. I mean, it has this piece of romantic history with the U.S. I don't think it was ever invested in heavily enough. I don't think the message of what it is and where it lies in our history ever got out there. I know a lot of writers worked hard on getting that out there, but never got out there to the masses. Don't think U.S. soccer ever did enough for it. We always saw it was on TV and nobody really did much with it. I've called some U.S. Open Cup finals too. So I think it has that common thread, and it is a piece of sporting history in America, and it's a huge piece of us as an American soccer culture. So it's not going anywhere. It's not going to disappear. It's going to come down to what MLS does and how many teams in play. But there's no way it's going to disappear. It'll still be a tournament that everybody can participate in. Question is, what's MLS going to do with it? Will they put a couple of teams in? The emergence of Leagues Cup is probably hurting the Open Cup, but I don't think it was ever nurtured.
Yeah. Jeff Carlisle said yesterday, one of the sentences in the apparent negotiation, precise level of team participation from MLS and USL clubs is still to be determined. And I think that, frankly, if you'd gotten into a situation like last year where the one game where LAFC basically said, and they were going up against Monterey Bay, and this is one of the examples that we always have given here on the show, is that LAFC said, look, we're taking a lot of our LAFC 2 guys up to Monterey Bay. They're going to be a part of this roster. And it just so happened that Steve Cherundolo started, I want to say, 8 LAFC 2 guys in that starting 11, because you know that he wanted to play but not win it. He wanted to put a team out there, and they still couldn't do that right. They won it in the extra 30 minutes over Monterey Bay, and they kept advancing in the tournament. So he couldn't even punt it correctly last season.
But look, this is what this tournament has become, and listen, I give some credit to coaches here because of the volume of the schedule and all. I don't know if this means you got to expand your rosters more, whatever. The question always is, who's taking the Open Cup serious? Well, look, Houston did the same thing and should have lost to Tampa in the very first game, except for a goal from a young, talented player named Brooklyn Reigns, right? So then all of a sudden you get through 2 or 3 rounds and you're like, okay, let's try to win this. And now you start playing your better players. So I think it's a conundrum. It's not an easy one. Everybody's going to have their take on, we want the serious team played. I mean, now you have Leagues Cup in here and it's U.S. against Mexico. So that complicates things because you don't want to be embarrassed by Mexican teams. They're monetizing that more. So it's all very, very tricky, but I love the Open Cup. I think a lot of people love it. Obviously, you see the passion.
Give me the lower division teams anytime making the big runs like we saw from Sacramento Republic in short order. Cut the promo, my friend. I'm going to let you enjoy your coffee and get on with your day. So what's going on right now with you, 97.5 Soccer Matters and with the Dynamo?
Yeah, I'm on twice a week now. So I'm really excited because I'm in drive time now, which I don't think there's many radio shows at 6 o'clock in their market when people are in drive time. And I think radio has a lot of challenges now, obviously with podcasting and great shows like yours. I mean, our show's podcasted too, but I still like the live element of it because, callers and things like that. But I had Ben Olsen on last night, so if anybody wants to go to Spotify, Google, or Apple, or any of these places and listen to Soccer Matters, you can subscribe, and we would love that. But every week is great. I'm like you, John. I think we love talking the game with great people, and it's a passion of ours, and it keeps the flame going. And look, as somebody that's been involved in the league since '96 and did TV for 26 years and now kind of moved over into different areas. I think we all took a lot of pride in trying to help this league survive and extol its virtues. And so we keep doing all that.
No doubt about it. At Glenn Davis, SOC on the 280 character app, at ESPN 97.5, Monday and Wednesday, 6 o'clock Central Time, or as the boss calls it here in this particular household, God's time zone. Glenn, it's always great to catch up with you right before the season starts. As you well know, since you are a golden ticket holder, you can crash at any time. Just text me or email me. Dude, I've got something to get off my chest. You can come in and crash. You vent your spleen, get ready for everything. And we can't wait to get the season kicked off. As always, thanks, my friend, for hanging out with us. We'll catch up with you very soon.
Well, John, one thing I do want to say is the local stuff and the local coverage, like you do, and guys do around the country. Let's not let this stuff die because, everything is getting a little bit different here, but let's keep the flame burning. Thank you for everything you do. I always enjoy coming on with you, and I think we probably could have kept going. So
you look, seriously, we could end up doing an hour or 45 minutes or a full 2-hour show and not think twice about it, but I need you to save your pipes because you got shows and you got games to play.
Thanks, John.